All right. We'll start.
How did you get these?
We have one guest, Tess.
What?
Yes, we're looking at you.
Hi, Tess.
From our Houghton campus.
That's not fair.
One of our committees here.
Did you get food?
Yeah,
Tess?
so she got Diet Coke.
No. Eric didn't get back to me.
Oh.
Eric didn't get back to Stacy.
Okay then.
About what? About food?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you have to have Eric get back to you about food?
Because of the money issue.
Oh, look, there's everybody.
All right. Moving right along.
We'll make sure you get something sometime there, Tess, I promise. My fault. I should have thought about it sooner.
I'll go ahead and get started.
So far.
I'm going to get started, Houghton. I've got about a half hour or so presentation, and just to give you some context to this, this is a part of a proposal that I'm putting forward to implement supplemental instruction here at Golebic. And in the last month or so, we've had a presentation from a gentleman named Matt Barron, who's given me permission to use some of the data that I have sort of factored into this presentation from Bay College. And they've had their program at Bay. It's kind of a context here, and I've kind of worked with them a little bit to sort of understand what they're doing, how they're doing it. A couple of things up front, and I bring this up later in the presentation, are the challenges of doing this. Obviously, there's a financial challenge. The initial challenge may not be so difficult because I do want to pilot this earlier than later, but the sustainability part of it. And part of getting the support for that is getting the support of all of you, the faculty, and where supplemental instruction may be of value to certain courses. What I've seen, and I'll point some of this out and show you some other things schools are doing around the country, which I find quite interesting in terms of how they set their model up, how they provide support information, etc. You know, they're all very unique in that regard, but ultimately, the courses are associated with classes where there may be a low level of persistence, retention issues are a concern, and this is a mechanism or a tool to support those students being successful. It's important to realize that supplemental instruction is not, it's different from tutoring, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but it doesn't eclipse the role of the faculty member. This is where students go and they get support from a SI leader around the curriculum, the content areas, and they work in groups, okay? And the SI leader must work in partnership, in very close partnership with the faculty member. What you'll see from some of the data from Bay is they've seen some significant improvement in retention, namely in math courses, some of the science courses, and I think they're piloting it now, and I don't know if I brought this in here with, I think, or working it with 15 of their courses. But they started off with 2 classes. And my goal is really to start, I'd like to start this summer with 1 class. And I have an opportunity to hire a SI leader potentially. They can be trained through Bay College's model and come back and work with us. So that's just a little bit of context about this. My interest in it is driven through, I want to really help the students and the faculty members support student success. And one of the things I've come across and become very interested in is this. And I'm very open to feedback, constructive criticism, ideas. Are you seeing some things out there that maybe we could build into this? So there's 2 parts of this presentation. Part of it is informative, but part of it is sort of a proposal to here's something that, from an instructional end, in partnership with the student services end, I'd like to implement as early as fall. So here we go. I call the presentation What's Up with Supplemental Instruction. And I'm going to tell you what's up with it right now. Here's what is up. And you can, I'm not going to necessarily read all of this, you have it in front of you, but just sort of a little definition. It's a student academic assistance program, in essence. Okay, so it doesn't take the place of the class. It's different than tutoring in that tutoring is generally done one-on-one. Okay, and it's content specific, it's maybe a topic specific. Supplemental instruction would actually cover a broader range, and it could be a number of students in that class participating in it. The interesting part of it is some schools have supplemental instruction as an option for students. So they may have Like if you give out your syllabus the first day of class and your class happens to be one where supplemental instruction is offered, you know, it may say it is optional. In some cases, it is absolutely mandatory. So, and those would be with classes where we've had a history of, hey, you know, students really struggle in this class because it's a difficult class. It has nothing to do with the faculty member, it's the content. And so, does this mean that the student needs a little bit of assistance outside of the classroom with their peers in a collaborative setting to better understand the material? So, that's sort of this academic assistance program piece. High-risk courses versus high-risk students. That's a part that I think is important. We want students to get through courses, we want them to be successful, and so that's really sort of a piece of it that's critical. Proactive assistance before the problems occur. From my perspective, and this is also grounded in some data where, you know, you see students, you know, after, you know, say 5 or 6 weeks, they start to drop. And we oftentimes can't pinpoint what those issues are. There's personal issues, there may be academic issues, there may be time issues, there may be, I mean, we can go on and on about what are the factors that influence students sort of dropping a class before they even get started. This model would actually, from the very beginning, and now some schools, week 2 supplemental instruction starts, because week 1 is usually we're getting set, here's the syllabus, here's what we're doing, students are still adding and dropping, trying to figure things out. So supplemental instruction in some places will begin week 2, and some it'll begin the very first week. But the idea is that it gets to the problem before it starts. So from the very beginning, students are getting support and help, you know, throughout the semester. And it contributes to student success, very general sort of what is up, but it contributes to their success. So it's a complement to the work they're doing in the classroom. A couple other specifics. And this is the part I like. It's proactive versus reactive. This is not a criticism from my own experience, but oftentimes we'll react. Oh, students are dropping. What do we need to do? And it needs to be more proactive. And so part of my vision around this is creating a more proactive process, which I find this could be successful in. Attached directly to specific courses. This is where I work in partnership with the faculty, and then in effect the SI leaders work in partnership with the faculty to really see, okay, what do we need to do here, what and how can we support you in helping the students be more successful. SI leaders attend all class sessions. This is an option. Some of this I pulled from my own research, some of it are some things I've come up with, but this is one that I've noticed was kind of a thread in a lot of different schools in what they do. A lot of them require the SI leaders to go to class, and I kind of put that's just me as an option, because it's really 50-50, you know, I mean, and I didn't quite understand, I mean, I understand the value of that, but I also, you know, from a logistical perspective and from a perception perspective, if you would, you know, I mean, you know, what does that mean for us? And then it's also how broad are we going to do this. SI is not a remedial program. I'm also, on a side note, when we talk about remedial and developmental, you know, I'm sort of trying to get the language changed to more of gateway courses. I mean, you know, rather than developmental, because there's that stigma that, oh, I'm taking, or I've tested into development level courses versus I've tested in some gateway courses which are going to prepare me for the upper level sessions, classes. Remedial is not. We're not giving them remediation in something because they haven't failed anything. They haven't been, you know, not successful yet. This is an opportunity to work with them in a continuum of 16 weeks or 15 weeks, whatever we end up determining is the right way. Promote student interaction and mutual support. That's the big difference between tutoring and supplemental instruction. Oftentimes your tutoring is one-on-one. You'll have a one-on-one session, and that's very valuable. There's some data in here that actually shows the success rates of tutoring over supplemental instruction. I think I included it in here. If I didn't, I have a little folder that I can send you all the literature where I pulled some of this, but there's also some good stuff. But that was an interesting piece for me as well, because that's a question I asked myself up front. Well, what's the difference between tutoring and supplemental instruction? And it's really sort of the collaborative nature of one versus the other. So that student interaction is key with each other. And that also is promoting what we're seeing more and more now, even though it's been around forever, is action learning and collaborative learning and the dynamic of students working with each other outside of the classroom is where a significant amount of learning, or at least comprehension, occurs. You know, the class is generally where you're getting the information, you know, and as I always used to say, you're not here to teach the students anything. You're here to create the environment in which they can learn and think and reflect, and then begin to reflect on that content outside of class, and hopefully make some progress. Supplemental instruction is a component that helps them do that. Instructor receives useful feedback from the SI leader, and that's where it's got to be like this. So it's not the students are working with the SI leader, wherever that would be, and there's no connection back to the faculty member. Like here are some things I'm seeing the students really struggle with. Just some food for you, instructor, to, you know, maybe you're able to make some adjustments in your lecture or the way you present material.
Or the instructor can tell the SI instructor how to do it.
Exactly. or that, exactly. Here is, you know, I'm going to use this link here, and I'm going to, now I'll hopefully be able to do this. And I want to show how others are doing it, just to give a couple of ideas here. And they have a video at the bottom here, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm going to play this, and then we can go from there. Apologize for that pause, but here we go.
Supplemental Instruction, or SI, is an internationally used student support service that's attached to traditionally difficult courses.
That was scary.
Not only does it improve the average grade for a particular course section, it also offers the students a variety of study techniques which they can apply to all of their other coursework as well. SI sessions are guided group study sessions that are facilitated by a trained SI leader.
Supplemental instruction is a deviation from our regular courses because as educators, we want to motivate each student. So many of the SI classes eliminate the traditional lecture type environment and offer a more personal interaction type environment.
And that's one of the things I love most about SI, and that's what I think students love about SI, is that whatever they need is what we try to give them as SI leaders. We ask for their input as much as possible. We ask for the instructor's input as much as possible.
Personally, I really enjoy it because I enjoy taking the mistakes I made in my classes and being able to kind of translate that to study tips to help students and kind of save them some of the heartaches I had in learning through trial and error how to study and study very well.
SI sessions focus on how to learn while learning what to learn.
I was at Bay 10 years ago when there wasn't SI, and I'm at Bay now with SI, and I feel like for me personally, with the math and science classes that I'm in, it's not only brought the students together, but it's helped us raise our grades, help us learn the material more, and more importantly, retain the material. So I actually conceptually know what's going on in the class as opposed to just memorizing things just to get through the day.
Personally, I feel that it just gives me that positive uplift to know that I can do this, that I can succeed in this class that I struggle with. And just the overall support and camaraderie within that unit, it's phenomenal.
SI showed me how to look at what was presented to us at a different perspective. Also, the study group nature of SI encourages friendships between students. And when a student is better engaged with their overall college environment, it positively affects their college success.
And they seem to genuinely love each other. They do. They care about each other. To be able to find allies immediately was very confidence inspiring for me as a student.
I'm much better in a group where I hear other people's ideas, where I can voice my idea and have people, you know, yeah, that's right, no, that's wrong, and this is why I feel that way.
The most important thing is what is doing to student success.
There's always more than one way to learn something, and in SI, you are given numerous ways to learn one concept. One of those numerous ways will work for you.
But the benefit of that investment, we just finished this in math, where you start calculating interest and things like that, the benefit's going to be in your final grade.
They need to make an investment in their own education. They need to commit to being a better student, to learn more, to have the better depth.
I think my total phrase by the sum of my SI experience would be confidence inspiring. I think that amazing would be the other word that I would use.
Awesome.
Outstanding.
Excellent.
SI will give you a leg up.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal.
SI.
We're going to go on back here. So that's, that was actually shared with me or brought to my attention by Mr. Barron, who is their SI director and Center for Math and Science director.
I noticed that the students that they had on there, I think all of them were non-traditional students. What's, do they have any data for the different groups of students with SI?
I think they do, and if what I could do as well is I'll forward Matt's presentation he gave to Developmental Ed a couple weeks ago, which I think has more of that data, because I think he breaks it down in there, which is a good point. And I mean, in our case, I mean, it would be interesting to look at that as well. I don't know. They've had 1,500 students at Bay have been enrolled in SI, in classes that have an SI component. And I'll get to this in a second, not to jump ahead, but they've seen some pretty interesting results that are on the positive end. Their challenge now is continuing to sustain the culture of SI, because their initial initiation of it was through a Title IV grant. It's a federal grant, similar to TRIO grant and whatnot, and that funding is running out, I believe, next year. So they're naturally giving presentations to the board, bringing faculty together who really had a positive experience with it, showcasing the positive outcomes that they've experienced, and hoping to frame a pretty strong argument that the college needs to invest in this. I'm kind of starting, a little bit differently. I want the college to invest in it up front because, it's important. And, while we can start it pretty loosely with some support, and I'll get to this later, from maybe the foundation, some funding from the college, potentially some grants that I'm looking at, ultimately the college needs to invest in this. This is something that I believe very strongly that will support some of the things that we're seeing around some gaps in student success in certain areas. And from what I've read and heard and talked with individuals, I'm actually going to visit Kansas City on my own, taking a couple days off, and I'm going to drive there to check out their model. That's where this whole concept originated back in 1976, I believe. I forget the woman's name, but I'm going there to meet with their team and to kind of take a look at their philosophy around it and bring some of that information back to us as well. But on that note, another school that I found, I forwarded this to a few individuals, maybe from math and science if I remember. I was doing some research and I really liked, although it's not a community college, Iowa State University. I was just impressed with their setup, and I have a link to what and I'll show you what I mean, but this is sort of their definition of it. Part of the challenge, too, that I'm putting out there is us having the opportunity to define SI here. Like, what does it mean for us? And one of the things I've noticed is, although SI at the fundamental level is the same thing, an academic support component for our classes, the definition that many schools have of it are very unique in how they approach it. So, they have 3 to 5 50-minute sections using collaborative learning. I've seen schools that have 2 sessions a week or 1 session a week. Some do it on the weekend. Some make it mandatory. Some are optional. There are some individuals that are in that school of thought that students don't do optional. Well, when students realize the value of option A, and then it can help them in their success, and they're motivated to do so, I believe that there's argument that says, well, why not? And the key to making it successful, from what I've seen, is the culture of it. And when students begin to see the success and realize the success through their grades, word of mouth is a pretty strong thing. And we're a small school, so I think that works on our benefit as well. A lot more than, say, it would at Iowa State University, where, impressively enough, they have a pretty pretty nice staff and a lot of people and a lot of money, and so their operation is, if you would, operate a little more smoothly than organizations who might not have a ton of money to invest in. But at a fundamental level, it's a simple concept. So, yes.
It seems to me that the program revolves around the SI leaders.
Yep.
And it says the SI leaders are undergraduate students.
Here at Iowa State?
Well, all
Just
of
in
them,
general.
it's in general.
They're former students, could be current students who are particularly strong.
Okay.
Or in some schools, they have actually been adjunct faculty, and in a couple of schools, they've actually been full-time faculty who had an interest in doing that as well. So,
Okay, is it a paid position?
absolutely, it's a paid
Okay.
position, yep.
Um,
And that's where the financial piece.
How often does the training have to take place because of turnover with the SI leaders?
At the end of my presentation, one of the challenges is SI retention, SI leader retention. Because if they're students, and say you have a really strong student, for example, in chemistry, really strong, they can really help on a supplemental instruction end, okay? They're only going to be here 2 years potentially. And
They're
then
really
you
strong
lose
in
them.
chemistry, they'll only be one because we
Yeah,
don't have
well,
organic
there you go.
chemistry.
Oh. All right. Okay, point taken. We're working on it. So that's a good point. And what we would do, and what I've asked Matt is if we could use their training, and they would. So say we started this in the fall, and we had 4 SI leaders we wanted to train. We could go through their training and without cost, and they would basically give those students or those individuals the certification of SI leader, and they would have the ability then to draw from those resources. One of the ways that this is going to work is in that sort of partnership, because for us to do our own training, to bring somebody like Matt in, I mean, it can get expensive, so they've agreed to support us on this because they understand what it took for them to get started. And while we don't have a $1 million grant up front to sustain this for 4 years, it would be nice to be able to have some schools that are willing to provide some resources. It's kind of similar to what we've done with our housing, where our RAs got training through Michigan Tech, and that was sort of in a partnership kind of way, rather than bringing a specialist in and costing a lot of money. I'd rather put those dollars into the pay, into establishing a strong structure, etc.
So for the SI leaders, as of right now, where are your thoughts of who we really could get? Not these are all the options, but
I'll tell you right now, the
career
one
for us.
gentleman that I've been talking to, and I think you know Mark Mulligan, who's a tutor over in Trio, very sharp young man, at least from my impression. I've been meeting with him. He's actually participated in a developmental ed meeting. He's really interested in getting his foot in the door in higher education, and so I'm sort of mentoring him, but also he sort of just got aligned with SI and said, wow, that would be something and he's graduated from Michigan Tech, and I think something biological, I forget. And now he's just gotten into graduate school downstate, and he wants to get a master's degree in neurological biology, something pretty impressive. But his interest ultimately is he would love to come back here one day and teach, and I find that pretty cool. And so he's around this summer, and that's and I said, obviously your expertise and your knowledge would have to align with what class we're supporting. But furthermore, to answer your question more directly, is that I would be looking at putting literally an ad out, but hopefully drawing from some of the tutors we currently have in Trio, who would then be hired and go through the training specifically for SI. And so they would understand that. I mean, I kind of want to use who we have here, I mean, the talent we have, and help them develop. And individuals like Mark, not Matt, it's Mark Mulligan. Mark is that he has an interest and a passion for this stuff. So what better way to get your foot in the door and to get started with actually having a very strong interest in helping students be successful? And he said they had parts of this at Michigan Tech, and he had done tutoring there, and it really helped. And a point he made, and I kind of meet with some of the students every now and then, very, very informally, about their experiences, and he had an experience at Michigan Tech, and he goes, most of my learning happened with my peers. Class is awesome, but the real comprehension and digestion, if you would, of that material and the application of it, happens among your peers in a serious collaborative way. And SI more or less formalizes that with a trained facilitator who also has sort of an expertise in that topic. So, was there a question?
I was just going to say, would the SI person have to be specific to a course? Would expertise have to be?
Like you wouldn't, obviously I wouldn't, be an SI leader for maybe one of Angela's very difficult, maybe a capstone class, because what do I know about that topic? AP, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess
Business English.
what I'm asking is, are they going to be a facilitator more in technique for studying and learning, or are they going to be a
They would all be
facilitator
trained in
more
that, but
in a topic area?
no, it would be more. It would be both, right? Because they would all be trained in the technique component of it. But then, if there's a SI session that's related to whatever class, then that SI leader should have expertise and knowledge in that topic. So, I pulled this from Bay, and my last slide was out of place. That Iowa wants you to come after this, but targets traditionally difficult courses. So that's where we need to identify what are those traditionally difficult courses, and what do we define as difficult? I mean, is difficult driven by retention, by from fall to fall? Are we losing students in certain areas that we can really help support? Review sessions outside of class, led by trained SI leaders, focused on processing content, which is the key. And that's where that sort of collaborative component comes in. It implements learning strategies, so that's where your point, Carol, is that absolutely they would be trained in helping students understand how to study. And it's kind of an interesting thing. On another end, I've been really thinking hard about, really at a fundamental level, young people, from that 1st through 6th grade, that's where the foundation of their study skills really begin. And this is really helping those students relearn that, if not learn it for the first time, how to really study and use that time wisely to comprehend the material. And when you're talking about traditionally difficult courses, for the most part, most likely second-year courses, and we can also talk about this at another level, at the sort of gateway level or developmental level courses, we want those students to be more successful. And if part of them being successful is, like I think the woman in the Bay clip said, you're teaching students how to learn well, learn. I forget exactly what her quote was, but that was a very interesting point. And then, this is the unique piece of Bay. They have mandatory attendance. Some schools have optional attendance. Like you could say, hey, class, welcome to Business 400, 200, and just to let you know, there's an SI component to this class. It meets on Thursdays, and Connie or Serena is your SI leader, and they'll be in the class probably next week to give you a little bit of a sense of what that is and how it can help you. Or, welcome to this class. When students register, they know there's an SI component to it. Maybe that means there's an additional fee to that class.
I was just going to ask you, do they pay for that?
This is all supported by grant. So students don't pay. So that's another piece I'm working on with the guy who approves lunches for people, right? No punch to air, but to figure out, is there a way, we're going for fees in April, so I'm looking at if there's a class we would
like
add.
Some sort of lab fee.
Right, exactly. And we do that in classes, and our rationale is we would look at classes that are traditionally difficult and where we really want to support the faculty member and those students. Because what's the point of enrolling students and not doing anything about supporting their success? And that's at the heart of this, that's where I'm going. And so I don't think that's a very difficult thing to sell.
Can I say
I think it'll
something?
work. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Tess.
I'm not sure if one school does this, but the turn of the semester, the counselor asked me if my son would be interested in taking, it sounds so much like this, for his math class.
Mm-hmm.
He took algebra as a freshman and failed it, so he's taking it again as a sophomore and was still not doing very good. And they took him tutoring and put him into a class. It sounds so much like this. And what they did is he doesn't get a grade for it, but he earns a math credit. And his grades went up tremendously.
Yeah.
In just 2 months. So.
Cool.
I don't know if
That's a
is
good,
any ideas, or, you know, if that's exactly what this is like, because there are more students, you know, it's not the one-on-one, it's actually the kids meet in a classroom to work on math.
yeah, that would sound, from what you just said, more like a supplemental instruction model where there's a number of students in there. So if you had a class of 25 students and it was mandatory, all 25 of those students would need to go to the SI sessions on Thursdays from 2 to 3, or 2 to 4, or whatever. And, you know, that would be, what they will be doing in there would be in accordance to what the faculty member is covering on the syllabus, and where essentially there's been some struggle with content. So, you know, it sounds like, to me, like that's a sort of loosely kind of a supplemental instruction model that he's engaged in. At least that's how I heard it. I mean,
Right.
you know.
Well, like I said, he doesn't get a grade for it, but
Right.
he does get a math credit to go towards his graduation requirements, you know, so. But,
And there's no grade for the SI part. I mean, you get a grade for your class. So if it's a technical math class, it's 4 credits. If there's an SI component to it, the idea of that is to support the success of that student. And, you know, so if you have a student that's getting a C, but with, you know, an SI class, you know, they have an opportunity to get a B because of the extra support, then that's really
Right.
what we're doing. The financial end of it is maybe charging the students a small lab fee to cover the expense of the SI component in that class. And there may or may not be resistance up front from students on that, but I would frame it as a very important tool to consider in supporting their success, personally. So.
If we would attach in a fee to it, that definitely would impact, you know,
Yeah.
mandatory versus optional as well,
It
you
would.
know, because.
I'm more of the mandatory
Okay.
kind of school of thought, but
Okay,
don't
I
know.
actually, I thought, based on something you said before, you were leaning the non-mandatory.
No, I would prefer mandatory. I can see the value in it being non-mandatory and this is where maybe I have
I
some
think mandatory
contradiction.
is-
I
that
mean,
would be my
mandatory,
vote.
because I mean, students, you know, oh, that was a great experience, you should do it, whatever. You know, versus it was a great experience, you should do it, I'm absolutely going, and they're there next week. So that's, I mean, it's like how much do we want to depend on students' word of mouth? Although it can be powerful, I think by making it mandatory, as students are more successful, they encourage their friends and I'm going to sign up for the section with the SI component because, you know, and it will be interesting personally to look at if we have, say, 4 sections of the same class, 2 with SI, 2 without, to really look at the student success rates in those classes. And then ask the students, hey, did you feel that really helped you perform better in that class? It'd just be from, a very limited sample, but it would be interesting.
So does Bay do that? They have some that are SI and some that
Oh,
are
yeah,
not?
yeah, they have,
Have they found that
yeah,
the,
SI
one
sessions.
of the things I would wonder over time, I mean, I don't think it would, the first few years you'd know this, but over time, are you gonna get the students who are your better students anyway in the non-SI? Do they start kind of segregating by word
That's
of
a good
mouth?
question.
Because, I mean, part of, the SI is good, but also having good students in the class with the non-good students is good for both of them
It is.
as well. So I just wonder if there would be kind of that.
Especially if you have a mandatory collaborative session.
So, and how?
Like, at a philosophical level, that's a really good question, and I'm gonna ask Matt what their experience has been with that, because that is true. If you have, because they do, and you'll notice, I don't think I put the list here, but I'll send you his presentation. They have a list of all the classes they offer, and naturally there are a number of sections of each of those classes. And so these are the ones where, you know, they have 1 or 2 sections of math that have SI, and the other 6 don't. And that'd be a good question, like, is enrollment affected, you know, in terms of, I don't know how you, high performing, low, you know, so are all the students going into the section with SI those that really need help, and you're a really strong student, so you don't have that balance, which I agree, you absolutely need that balance. I mean, heck, that's a huge part, you know.
And how
It's a good
does
question.
the mandatory attendance get enforced at Bay? Is
When
there-
students enroll in it, it's part of the class,
I mean, so, but if they're not going, is there a penalty, a small penalty on their grade, or do you know?
You know, I don't know, I'll ask. That's a good question. I don't believe there is, but I believe there is some consequence to not going. But the success they've had is people actually go. They don't miss.
That's where I was trying to go with the credits. Like if you have a 4-credit class, if they don't go to the SI, then they only earn the 3 credits. To get the 4th credit, they go to the SI.
Yeah. Yeah, that's if we add a credit to it, which is also
That's
another.
a lot more than a fee though.
Right, well, exactly. That's, that's another $100 versus say another 25.
Well, and you're
If
talking
that.
about paying instructors more if you go to
Yep.
another credit too.
Yep, exactly, so.
And
Yep.
with the non-traditional
And the
students
SI.
Yeah.
who have jobs and that kind of thing, the idea that an SI section would need to be known at the time of registration, so they
Would.
know that, it's meeting 4 days a week in a sense, instead of 3 days a week.
And that's where we're, obviously fall schedule's out, but, there's always ways to work through that. I mean, and my whole philosophy is everything that we do is so fluid. I mean, nothing's like static. I mean, it's not like we have these stock moves so is that an excuse? Well, we're not going to do this until next year.
No, I'm not-
So it's,
Well,
but it's the point, is that
But I'm just thinking of, with non-traditional students, the problem we have with attendance
Right.
anyway is the
Yes.
fact that they have family, they have job,
Mhm.
they have children obligations, and,
Yeah.
all those things
I know.
create
One of the things that we could do for fall,
the issue.
since it was already out and we couldn't have it as a mandatory thing, but this as a pilot thing in those classes that you were interested, that you would have potential SI leaders for, is pool, have a survey or whatever, would you be interested in this, and give them when can you make it?
Right.
And then try to make something that's a little more informal that first.
And that's the first, at the end, I give you my little proposal, and one of that is maybe the pilot even something this summer. It's a little smaller group, kind of see how it goes, and then in the fall, maybe doing something like that. I think that's really the way we're going to have to go. And then just kind of use that as a baseline. I can present that to other groups and say, hey, we piloted 5 classes in the last 6 months between summer and December 31st, and here's what we found. And hopefully it's positive. I mean, there's no guarantees on this, but I haven't gone to one school's website, talked to one person who either oversees SI, is an SI leader, who says it hasn't worked. Everywhere has seen improvement, which is pretty cool. So a couple of quick data points from Bay, kind of a sweeping percentages. SI sections increase pass rates by 5% over at non-SI, and they provide data to back that up in terms of numbers. And then SI sections decrease withdrawal by 5% may not be talking thousands of young people, students, non-traditional students, what have you, but 5% is 5%. I mean, it's an improvement. Some schools have seen as high as 25%. I mean, it's quite amazing, to be honest with you. I think Iowa State has seen just significant improvement. Kansas City, enormous improvement. I mean, they have an international model. People travel there to spend a week and just kind of hang out in their hallways to learn how this works. And it's pretty cool stuff, and obviously used with permission by Dr. Barrett. Here's an interesting thing here. I'll give you the whole presentation from Bay, but I just kind of picked some things that I found interesting. At all the Bay courses here, they give the pass rates. SI is 60%, transitional courses. And then transitional courses, I believe he defined as transfer courses. And then math courses, which is pretty high. So, and there's a list and they've been doing it, I want to say, 3 years.
Actually, the transitional courses, I can see them at the bottom, it's kind of cut off, but tran include.
Yep, you're right.
So those are developed.
Yep, they're developmental. Yeah, you're right. Or gateway. And they call their developmental transitional sometimes, I'm more of I like gateway or something. I don't know. I've never been a fan of it. I don't know, maybe it is. I never thought of that. Yeah, when I was there was a lot of stigma around developmental, and 60–70% of the students. I mean, it's. So there you go. I'll give you the whole thing. I'll email all of you that. A couple other things I wanted to show you. This, I don't know if I want to show you kind of how they. This is I may have did I send this to the math and science group. This link. This is kind of how they set it up, which I thought was pretty cool. Now,
Oh, yeah, you did.
And, you know, I would love this to be, you know, I mean, if I'm a student on the outside, I'm interested in, you know, a program, I should be able to go to that, click on the hyperlinks and get a description of the course, maybe a sample syllabi, you know, information. Here is really cool. And so, you know, essentially they have, you know, everything pretty clear. I mean, these links are all hyperlinks, so they'll go to relevant information. But if you're in the SI section in any of these courses, you can click on the course. There were a couple that didn't have anything, but okay, so here, and it gives the information. Here's bio, 211, supplemental instruction, lecture is Tuesday, Thursday, instructor, blah, 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 SI leader is Kirsten, weekly SI sessions, here they are, and then resources. So, and, you know, you click on the resources and, you know, it is pretty cool. I mean, everything's right there. I just thought the transparency of it was pretty cool.
Who's making up these for this format?
I don't know. I have a phone call into their director there because I said I'm looking at setting something up like this in our school, and I was really impressed with how you did this. And one of my questions was, who comes up with this? I believe it's a partnership between the faculty member and the SI leader, and then it's posted. Because a couple of places, I think the instructor or the SI leader is like, hey, I haven't posted it yet, or, you know, it's coming. I'm just picking random ones because I don't remember when. That's another one there. But also, it's a good resource for you guys too. So that's that. But I just thought that was a really cool, and you can pick any of those classes. And there's also some other cool things here too. And interestingly enough, a lot of, actually most places, other than a handful, if that, SI, you know, the SI instruction is usually driven through the Dean of Students office or the student services. You know, I have my own personal opinions on all of that. There needs to be more intersection there, but because this is supporting faculty, students, you know, it's where you put it, it doesn't matter. But you'll notice as you go through a lot of these that it kind of resides in that office. So a couple other things you can look on yourself. Actually, I have one in here from my where I was a dean for several years, 5 years in St. Louis, and they have a pretty cool supplemental instruction. I worked a little bit with them on it there through the continuing ed division, but it's a pretty cool thing. I don't have to click on both of these. And then here's another one that I thought was interesting. I kind of pick and choose the ones that I thought were relevant or interesting. So here, I'm going to start with challenges that we're going to have, and then end with good news. Sustainability. But I always say but because everything I've ever done has started with fumes. I mean, I don't think you need, you know, everything up front. You need to learn as you go, and this isn't. I mean, this is backed up by a lot of schools. Our own data is suggesting we need to put some things in place to support our students' success. I don't think it's going to be a big challenge to get the support. It's just going to be a matter of scale and how much do we do, what are we doing, and I really believe that piloting a handful, if that, of courses in both summer and or fall, and the balance could be wherever we want it heavier, it is, and then really use that as a baseline for ourselves and use that to really sell the bigger idea. SI leader consistency. I noticed that as a common theme in a lot of schools, and part of that is, you know, they're really good SI leaders, but they want to move on, or they're going to graduate school, or they're graduating, or, you know, I mean, you could pick an excuse and that's what it is, or a reason. And then instructor support. I don't think that's going to be a huge issue, but I noticed that in, I'd say 50% of the schools, the first year, faculty are like, well, you know, geez, you know, I mean, why do we need it? I'm doing a good job, and it's not about that. It's about, you know, it's not, and it's just, you know, sort of selling that sometimes was difficult from a few people I talked to. Another dean and a couple of faculty members.
On the opposite end of that, actually, when I think about this, like especially those worksheets and stuff for my class, the way I teach my 099 class is pretty much an SI thing, is right. What it is. And so all of the work that goes into the worksheets and stuff that is necessary to have it be a guided kind of thing and not just a free-for-all doing homework
Right.
is a lot of work. And so from not a like, oh, I don't see the value of it instructor complaint, but and the opposite of that is like, oh my gosh, yes, this is a good thing, but I already do a lot for my students, and now I'm going to have to work with somebody else to do even more for my students.
Right.
So that's the other thing is like, okay, this is going to be even more work for me, which, okay, but is it going to, it comes back to the sustainability thing.
Right.
It's like, how many things around here do we start and we go gung-ho with, and then everything just fizzles out, and so you're like, well, and I think this could be a really good one. So getting some sort of commitment from the college for a time period, I think would be helpful in getting more instructor support as well, so we don't feel like the efforts that we're putting on
Are going to be sort of transactional, like, for a year and
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Or it worked, but
Right, and you
wants
make
to
up
put
all of
money
this
in
stuff, and then
I agree.
it
I
sits
agree.
there in your office.
And that'll be my job to facilitate that and hopefully make it work. I mean, that's something I've seen just even the last couple of years, just, and it's kind of led to, here's a really cool thing that we could be doing. So I agree, and that's a good point. So getting some buy-in, and even getting some buy-in from sort of small circles and then letting that expand. I've talked to some faculty very, very, very informally about this, and there's sort of an interest. It's sort of like, oh, okay, I'm interested in hearing more. So. And I taught a class at Harper College many years ago, and there was an SI component to it. It was a high-level technical writing class, and I did some work, but I was an adjunct, but it wasn't as if I did a ton of work. I met with the SI leader a couple, 2, 3, 4 times during the semester when there were challenges, but I got a lot of feedback from the students, more so than the SI leader. But that was 10 years ago, so and that was very limited. Very limited experience. Here's my plan. Pilot 2 to 3 classes, develop developmental gateway classes, traditionally challenging classes. I'm kind of diversifying what we would be doing. Utilize SI leaders from current or recent student population. Kind of goes to a couple points. And that would be where we would actually, look at recruiting some people internally. Maybe going to some of the faculty, and if you have really strong students who have an interest in teaching or interested in academic support, it's also an opportunity for some young people to get their foot in the door if they're really interested in this kind of work. Utilize college funding. I'm seeking out some grant funds, some GCC Foundation money, and then also looking at maybe some, site fund money. Very small amount, but, and the other part of that is, in our budgets we have some flexibility in sort of how I'm able to use some instructional funds, and I like to dedicate a small amount to this sort of initiative, and then sort of couple that with some other support, and maybe get a decent amount to say, okay, let's under the pilot umbrella, let's see what happens in the first year, collect some meaningful data, and then present that as hopefully a case to have the college invest long term. There's a lot of opportunities. My idea, and as many of you know, I can be a little ambitious on things. Fall, right? Fall 2012. Or spring 2013. But piloting it, and I put on the bottom possibly piloting 1 class. That's the non-ambitious part of me. I think had 3 there. I'm like, I'll just say 1. Maybe we'll get lucky. And that's where I would just, it would be very informal. It wouldn't be mandatory. It would be where we would say, hey, class, just to let you know, the college is working on a new initiative called Supplemental Instruction. We've determined that we're going to associate it with this class. We're not making it mandatory, and it could be me coming in for 10 minutes and letting the students know here's what it is. And we really encourage you to do this because we'd like to kind of hear about your experience at the end of the summer session. And I don't know, how we frame it, that can still be up for discussion. But go ahead.
So, off the top of your head, what classes, are you looking at potentially to
Math. 100, looking at, I was going to talk maybe about A&P, some of the nursing. There's been some nursing we talked about. Correct me if I'm wrong, nursing 226 maybe. I haven't memorized them all, but there was one I was talking with all of you about for a while. Yeah, there was a really tough one.
Yeah.
And English 100.
Pharmacology, if they've had me though,
Yeah.
they're a lot better.
Yeah. That's
come
it.
back, if they do, they come back and tell me, my students, tutor the ones who aren't in there. So you said maybe A&P and
Yep.
the nursing course.
Yeah. And I don't know, what do you think about a chemistry 099 or even chemistry 101? Something to think about. Maybe you're teaching in the summer, so maybe we can pilot it with you. I don't know. I mean, I'd be open to that. So a handful.
Any
you know.
of the, like, I'm sorry, kind of spacing, were there any of the, like English or literature, any of those? things that-
Literature, no, but possibly maybe a section of English 101, because we offer a ton of those, so it would be interesting to kind of get a correlation. I've talked, Ryan's one of the ones I've talked to informally about that. I've also loosely talked to Tricia about psychology. I mean, there are some success rates in those. I mean, a lot of drops. I mean, just students. It's a tough class. It's a first year class, but it's tough content-wise and whatnot, and there are high expectations. So that's another one. But you know, I mean, I'm sort of loosely having those conversations because part of the buy-in from faculty is I sort of want to transition. You know, it's not like I show up Friday, we're doing this. It's like I talked to you for 2 months about it, so you kind of you've been primed in terms of, hey, here's another idea that Ken's kind of thrown out there. Let's get some buy-in first, and then go to those individuals who know and say, okay, this summer would you be willing in a non-sort of formal way to incorporate an SI component? I'll come in and we'll have the SI leader and see what happens. It'd also be interesting to get the students' reaction to it, just as a concept, you know, because it's something a little bit different than what we've done. And we struggle sometimes too on the trio end. I mean, you know, a lot of us know this or maybe not, but most of those students are the trio students. So that's serving less than 200 of our, you know, at the end of the year we may end up with about 1,000 students. So what are we doing with those other 800 students? And then, you know, if we look at our retention rates and some of these other things, I mean, that data can really kind of put a exclamation point on the end of some of these issues we're having. So this is just one sort of vehicle to help promote more success with the students. So with that being said, you know, just a couple of final thoughts I'm thinking is I say we're going to, you know, the cost effectiveness or the sustainability is a challenge, but I also think it could be cost effective in that, you know, for every student that you lose or retakes a class, it costs the college upward between $2,000 and $3,000. And this is data that, you know, I got from Jean when we were looking at, okay, if a student has to retake, you know, you have to, you know, we're paying again for this and that, and so it could be cost effective from that perspective. It can also be cost effective for the student because I'm not having to retake it. It could be cost effective from a financial aid perspective. Assist with students so with comprehension of course content and developmental study skills. It could lower attrition rates in courses. It could enable participants will be more likely to be retained. Help students improve exam grades and final course grades. Support instructors by maintaining high expectations and standards, which should be probably the first one. And then enhance the classroom experiences. So with that being said, that is sort of the end of my little idea, and I appreciate all of you being here and all of the great questions. And I can email you this presentation, and I also will email you Mr. Barron's presentation from Bay. And if you have any other questions, let me know. We're going to post this up on the faculty development site, and have a wonderful afternoon. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.